And
Welcome
I'm
back to
Kevin
Movie Reel. I'm
Tracy, and
Samantha Tomlinson.
boy, oh boy, am I excited for this episode, Sam.
I know. We're talking
My
Jurassic
all-time
Park.
favorite movie. I have been waiting to do this episode. Like, since we talked about doing this podcast, I have been waiting for this specific moment.
Yeah.
And the day has finally arrived, and now you get to listen to us talk about dinosaurs for 2 hours.
This movie is so it is
Yeah,
based
Jurassic
off
Park
a
by
book,
Michael Crichton.
which the book and there
I
are how many books are
want to
there?
say that.
Is it 3?
Yeah, there's the Lost
I know
World.
there's a
There's
Lost
Jurassic
World
Park.
book.
There's Jurassic Park: The Lost World, and I think that there's a third one. I don't remember. I'm not super familiar with the actual book series. I just know that Michael Crichton is the author, and he was a huge consultant for this movie, Jurassic Park.
He was a consultant, but he wasn't. He did write a version of the screenplay, but he's credited as it's him and someone else who are considered the screenwriters, but
Crichton.
Michael Crichton's he was like kind of barely Crichton. Okay, he was kind of barely like it wasn't his exact script. Like there is a version of the script that
also
he wrote, but it's
book
not this
varies very differently from the actual movie. Like I don't know if this is in the first one or in the second one, but there's like a very gruesome the dingo ate my baby kind of scene with a baby and some compies. I don't know if that's in the first one or the second one, but it is
the beginning of the second one, more or less,
but it's a lot more. Yeah,
I mean, I know she doesn't die,
but it's a baby in a it's a baby in its basket, and they swarm, and the maid discovers too late, and it is extremely graphic from what I've heard, and I don't know how to make heads or tails of that because I'm so used to the movies and not the book version of how this movie plays out, and that just seems so out of left field and a dark tone shift change. But for all I know, that is like how the movie or the books are told in that way. Because the movies are far more lighthearted. I mean, yeah, there's a couple more, like there's a few deaths here and there, but it's not anywhere near as dark as that. That is so morbid.
Yeah, this is a classic example of like a book where a movie adaptation where the book is not.
They differ, yeah.
I mean, it's not even just that they differ. It's Jurassic Park isn't known for being a book. Do you know what I mean? Like Harry Potter, the books are very much a part of the story. Lord of the Rings, even the books are very much a part of the
Chronicles
story.
Chronicles of Narnia.
I don't think yeah, exactly. I don't think Jurassic Park. I don't think I knew it was a book.
For me, it was the opposite.
Away.
I think I knew it was a book first as a kid, and then because I probably saw this movie when I was like 5 or 6 years old. I was very young, and admittedly, this movie did give me nightmares. I had a love-hate relationship with this movie, but I did learn from my dad early on that this was a book, and then I watched it with him. I had nightmares because of the T-Rex and the Velociraptors, and the reason why I had a love-hate relationship with this movie was I would watch another Steven Spielberg movie with dinosaurs, The Land Before Time, and that was kind of like my introduction to like love of dinosaurs, and then it's like, oh, I want to watch real dinosaurs, and I watched Jurassic Park. It's like, Dad, this is I believe so,
Spielberg?
yeah. Or at least like the first like one or two of them.
What? I never thought that he was.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Maybe yeah. It looks like maybe that's.
Yep. Executive.
Very weird.
Yeah. Executive. His
or
name
he produced
it, and so was George Lucas, which I didn't know about that.
What a weird combo. It's Steven Spielberg, Don
Yep.
Bluth, and George
Although Don
Lucas.
Bluth makes sense. That is very much his
Wow.
animation.
Okay.
Like
Well, yes, because
an
yes.
American Tail.
Have you seen that? There was this meme that said how Don Bluth only knows how to draw like 3 or 4 types of characters because in every single Don Bluth movie, there's like the characters in Anastasia look very similar to the characters in Thumbelina and American American
I,
and like all the things that he's done.
I
Like,
might
and I'm like,
I might
that's
have
super funny. I can't.
it's been a
Yeah,
really long time since I've seen a Don Bluth movie. I think the last one I saw was probably an
yeah,
American Tail, and that was probably like 5 or 6 years ago. That's a good one too.
yeah. Um,
Oh,
I don't
Feifel
think I
Goes
saw
West.
American Tail. I don't think I. So is that's so there's is that
there's
two
3 that I
American Tails.
remember.
So is well, there's 3, but is
That's the
Fievel Goes
second
West
one,
the
I
first one or
believe.
the second one?
Yeah, An American Tail
Okay,
is the first one where they immigrate from Russia to specifically Russia, I
Europe.
believe,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
America, and
America.
yeah,
Then they
yeah,
keep
they pretty much
going
just
west.
like manifest
Yeah,
destiny. And then
yeah,
I remember there's another
yeah,
one
yeah.
where he befriends uh a Native American mouse tribe, and there's like a I don't know, that one was really weird.
Oh boy.
Back to Jurassic
On that
Park, my
note,
favorite.
yeah. So Jurassic. So the book came out November 1990, and the movie came out June 11th, 1993. It had a budget around 63 million, and worldwide it made
Yeah.
over a billion. And it stars Sam O'Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, Richard Attenborough, and the kids are Ariana Richards and Joseph Mazzello. I don't know how to say his last name. And actually, fun fact, he was one of the
Oh, he
guys
was?
in Bohemian
Oh,
Rhapsody.
nice.
He was one of the guys in the band. Yeah, that was like the big thing when that came out. Was it was just like, oh, it's the kid from Jurassic Park. Like I don't he played I can't remember, well, because there's Freddie and then there's Brian and I don't remember all their names, but he
Yeah.
was
But
one of the
you
guys.
also forgot about
But
two
anyway,
very important characters. Wayne Knight playing Dennis Nedry, and
yes,
Samuel L. Jackson, who's playing as Arnold, but I just call him Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel Jackson. It's that's thing. We all
But no
know
one can
he's in this
remember.
movie, yet it's not the same. It's not the same vibe as when I'm watching a movie where I'm very much aware, because he's really entertaining, but it's not his presence
Yeah, no,
isn't overwhelming the
I
movie.
legitimately
Yeah,
had a moment in time where I completely forgot that Samuel L. Jackson was in this movie, because he is in a very like minor supporting role, and he has a very like unfortunate, like an off-screen death. He like leaves the scenes like, oh, I'll go turn on the power, and then like 30 minutes later it's like, hey, how come the power's not on? Oh, something must have happened to him. And then his arm just like his like severed arm just like falls into frame. It's like, oh, he's dead. I
that
guess
arm
that's the
is
end of that story.
the arm was very
I
fake
mean,
looking.
not everything's gonna look great
looked,
in this
I mean,
movie, considering it's how old it is. Yeah,
I know,
it is
but I
pretty
thought it
funny.
was
But
funny.
it is this movie just set a monumental industry standard for visual effects and special effects that are still followed today.
It won, yes, it won 3 Oscars, I believe. Best sound, or best, it was, I think, sound effects, visual effects, and I'm
If this
assuming
didn't make
music. Let me
music,
check.
I would be very surprised, because that is one thing I want to talk about, and we're probably
Yeah.
going to talk about every time John Williams scores a movie. But yes, John Williams' return, and I know we talked about John Williams a fair amount when we were doing the Star Wars.
Oh,
Oh wait,
it
it
wasn't
wasn't?
music.
No,
It didn't
wait.
win music. No, so visual effects, sound effects, and just sound, not music.
Really?
That's insane. That is
This is John
insane.
Williams,
This
like
is like
some of his like most
this
iconic work.
it's like up
Jaws.
there with Star Wars and Harry Potter and or, yeah, I guess Jaws. Like because I feel like with this, I went back and forth, but one of my favorite scenes is when uh Grant and Sattler get to the park and
Yeah.
they're seeing dinosaurs. And the music in that like moment right after the welcome to Jurassic Park is so
I
gorgeous and powerful, and I'm like this is a movie where the music should not be.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, it's John Williams, so it's going to be beautiful, but it's not. It's a movie where I wouldn't be thinking of the music being
I
beautiful, but it is. Like it's like it's like the same thing we were talking about Star Wars. Like it's John Williams.
he can
I
score.
don't. I don't.
His score is so iconic, and it
I,
takes a life of its own. And I admittedly watched like that specific scene you're talking about before.
yes, you know
Yeah,
exactly
it's
what
like
part of the
Dr.
music
Grant,
I'm
my
talking
dear
about.
Dr. Sattler, welcome to
J-
Jurassic Park, and that huge upswing in music, and it just goes into that crescendo. It's like
yes.
they move in herds, they do move in herds, and it gives me goosebumps
Yeah.
every
And he,
time. That movie,
yeah.
that specific scene, and that sound bite of audio, anyone and everybody can just automatically identify that movie and what part it is just from audio alone. And that is just the brilliance of John Williams. He can score a movie and you are able to pinpoint exactly where it is because his music is so iconic and it's so embedded into pop culture and that specific movie that it seems timeless no matter when you're watching it. And I absolutely love that.
A couple years ago at the Golden Globes, John Williams, Hans Zimmer, and Alexandre Desplat were all nominated. And I think I said something like, "Oh, my like top three favorite composers are all nominated." And my mom just looked at me like, "God, you're such a nerd." Like, because the fact that I have not even just one
I
favorite,
mean,
I
yeah.
have several favorites. Like, and now, well, John Powell is now in that mix. But yeah, I said this before. Like, music, I don't think people understand how much I love music and how deep my love for music goes. So this, and I do think, yeah, this that particular scene is so, the music's just so gorgeous. Yeah, on the swell, it's just encapsulates what they're seeing just
It yeah,
so, it's just so
it
perfect.
really is.
Like it is
Just
so perfect.
even like them just like going into the park and we get the iconic Jeff Goldblum laugh. That is like probably like the weirdest thing in the movie. Just yeah,
Wait,
when they're in
when
the
they're in the
helicopter
helicopter
flying
or they're in the
to
jeep?
the island, I know you like part of
Oh,
me was like as soon okay, hold on before you say it, I
I know where
know
you're
that
going with
like
this.
when I was watching this like Jesus Christ, she's gonna make the Family Guy joke, isn't she? I know she's gonna make that Family Guy joke.
I wasn't, I wasn't sure, but well, okay. The very first time, I don't see this as the first time I saw it because I got yelled at and then I had to
What?
explain my what happened. I it was Thanksgiving and my cousin was like, she was brought movies and she's like, which is more which is more Thanksgiving-y, dinosaurs or Nazis? So are we going to watch Jurassic Park or are we going to watch
Good
Indiana Jones?
choice.
and and we put on Jurassic Park, and my sister and I don't know if she had seen it. I hadn't seen it. But we get to that part, the helicopter part, we both look at each other like, "Welcome to Executive Bathroom Island." That's all we're seeing. But then the movie's going and it didn't get that far in, but I fell asleep. And one of my friends was like, "You fell
I'm
asleep?" I'm
disappointed
like,
in you.
"Okay, it wasn't at like the it wasn't like because I was bored. We got up really early and I was tired. I'm allowed to be tired." And I wasn't like I fell asleep during like the T-Rex scene. It was still very early in the movie. Like it was probably shortly after
Okay.
they just barely get to the park. So it wasn't like it wasn't like I remember I had a roommate who once said that she fell asleep during Avengers and I'm like, "What?" Like it wasn't because I was bored. I was
My
just
sister fell
tired.
asleep during Civil War
And you know
in theaters. I don't know how she pulled that off.
Oh,
She
that's
literally like fell asleep during I don't remember which part, but she woke up in the middle of like the huge like airport fight scene, and she was so confused.
when I was in 8th grade and we did like our DC trip, we went to Ford's Theater and we were being told that there was some presentation and everyone kept saying it was super good. Or we hear it's really good. And so for some reason, it wasn't just me. We all thought it was like a reenactment or something. And then some guy goes on stage and just starts talking about what happened in the most monotone voice I have ever heard in my life. And he's like, and then he said, Cephas Tirana. And we're all just like, and I was like, why am I so tired? Like, I'm like, why do I feel like I just fall asleep? And my friend told me she fell asleep, had a nightmare, woke up, and he was still going. Like, so I mean, I don't know, but so civil that was like a
Oh my
monotone voice,
god.
and we were all just like falling asleep. But this was like, but Civil War, I find that
I
more impressive
I
that
well,
someone
she
was
also
bored
like
enough
has
in Civil War.
like a very like vocal like dislike for superhero movies, even though she's like not
Mm.
fully like giving them a try, in my opinion. But I don't know. It just seems like I think she said that she was like she was like running a bunch of errands that day, and then she just kind of like went there as like a spur of the moment thing with some friends because they really wanted to see it, and they just kind of like drug her along because she had nothing else better to do, and then she just promptly fell asleep in the theater. So it's like I can't fully blame her, but at the same time, I'm going to blame her.
Oh boy, it's more just in
Yeah.
theaters. If it was
Well,
at
it was
home,
also
that'd be
right
different.
when our movie theater gave put in like the reclining seats. So it's like those seats are so
Oh,
comfortable. So it's
yeah,
like I can't blame her. Those things are super
yeah,
comfy. um
yeah, yeah. But so I didn't. Let me make this clear. I did not fall asleep because I was bored. I fell asleep
you had a
because I
full
was just really
Thanksgiving
tired.
day. I can yeah.
And I just fell asleep and I just went in the other room and fell asleep. But like then I think a couple I remember when Jurassic World came out and my the thing is my family just doesn't really get I don't like seeing movies out of order if I can avoid it. Like we talked about like last week we were talking about the Mummy. That was I think we both said we saw the second one first, just because
Yeah.
that's what I found on. I don't think I went out of my way, like, oh, I gotta see this movie. Like, that's just what I found first. Like, that's different, but like, I don't really want to intentionally go to the movies and, like, I will say, I remember I saw Spider Man Homecoming and I hadn't seen Civil War, and people were like, what? Or I hadn't even seen Ultron. Yeah, and people were like, what? I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a good reason. I just didn't get a chance to see it. But that, thankfully, I knew enough and there wasn't really any reason why I wasn't, like, there wasn't any
Yeah,
information that I found
it's pretty
confusing. So
straightforward
that
for
was
the most
different. But
part, but
like,
yeah, I can understand that.
but my sister was like, but this is out. I'm like, this is out now. We should go. It's like, but I haven't seen Jurassic Park. I haven't seen the movies that are before this. It doesn't make sense. Like same thing when The Dark Knight Rises came out, and my mom was like, go with your sister to see it. I'm like, I haven't. I have now, but she's like, I haven't seen Batman, and she's like, but you'll know what's going on. I'm like, no, I won't know what's going on. That's the problem. Like it's also just slightly an OCD thing. Like I would like to, if I
Yeah,
can, see
I
things in order.
completely
So
understand that. Yeah, like I haven't seen
yeah,
uh like there was a couple like Transformers movies that I had missed, and it's like, oh, like here's like Transformers 3 Dark of the Moon, and I hadn't seen the second one. I had only seen the first one. It's like, well, I'm not gonna know what's going
yeah,
on. And in the trailers, like there's like all these like other like Autobots and Decepticons. Like, who are these guys? I don't know who these guys are.
yeah, and this is a movie. I feel like I just don't think it would. I don't think like Jurassic World. I don't think. Again, still haven't
Uh,
seen it. It's
yeah.
not on anything, but I want to see him, and people tell me like I know you said how Fallen Kingdom was garbage, but I
I mean,
still would like
I'm
to.
not saying. Okay,
see it.
I
Or you said you
it
thought
had some weird
you said
implications
you
that
thought it
kind of
was
like make the first one seem very much more unethical than it already is. Of just, I mean, they straight up in this movie, like this
yeah.
is very much seems like very sketchy and illegal genetic manipulation. They're breeding dinosaurs, and I don't think that they're even fully allowed to do that. Um, they might have explained it better in the book, but in this movie they just make it seem like, oh, like we're very much on the up and up, and like uh Jeff Goldblum's character is like, no, you guys just rushed this to make a profit. You took someone else's ideas, you slapped it on a lunchbox, and you marketed, you sold it, and you didn't fully realize what you were doing. And in this one, it just seems like they're kind of in the Jurassic World movies. It just seems like they built upon that like kind of sketchy side of genetic manipulation, and then just added a whole other like very kind of out of nowhere detail that just seems like blatantly illegal. And also added a completely
Okay.
new character that is apparently like John Hammond's like best friend, and it's another just like super eccentric, dinosaur obsessed rich white guy who just lives in like the middle of like the
Uh,
California like Northern California like dense forest, and just like, oh yes, dinosaurs. Me and Hammond, we came up with this best idea of just making an island of dinosaurs. It was gonna be great. It's like,
and you're meeting him,
yeah,
and
we're
we're
meeting him
meeting
now
him
for the
now.
first time. It's like, what? Like what?
That's yeah. This yeah. Now you mention it, yeah. The thing about Jurassic Park is that this movie has so many
Yeah.
layers because the surface is a park full of dinosaurs are loose
Yes.
and people are in the park and they have to, it's a survival movie. But there is such a I know there's like because I don't like with the sequels, including Jurassic World. Oh, I know there's a lot of people that think like they didn't need sequels, but I agree that, and again, I haven't seen Jurassic World, but I understand that some of the sequels there
Yeah.
are problems and flaws. But I gotta say, in Jurassic Park, they say all of the reasons why this needs why this needs sequels, because this isn't just, yes, on the surface it's a park of dinosaurs and they're loose, but no, and they talk about it. They're This isn't just, oh, it's a park of dinosaurs. No, they are found dinosaur DNA, created dinosaurs, and tried hard to maintain and control it, but
Yeah.
they can't,
And then
because you can't,
yeah,
because
and
life
also
finds
like
a
on top
way.
of that, like
Like,
aside from this being like a survival movie, this is also like an industrial like thriller movie, because Dennis Nedry is like working as kind of like a double agent for some shady competitor company for InGen, and is stealing all the genetic samples for all the dinosaurs to sell like to this like other company for a huge profit. And that's where like a lot of this movie's problems are coming from, because Dennis Nedry sabotages the entire security system, like electrical grid for the system, which causes the entire park to shut down. And I mean, this goes poorly for him. He ends up getting killed by a dinosaur that that just straight up eats him, and like his entire like efforts were for nothing because he died. Um, but it also kind of brings into question this movie was for like paleontologists, this movie was extremely dated, because this included a lot of theories and ideas that paleontologists back in the 90s thought were fact, but have since then disproved as nothing but theories. Like the Dilophosaurus, the dinosaur that eats Dennis Nedry. They theorized that it had
hmm.
some type of gland that it could shoot this like basically just like hawk like a loogie into its prey space to try to incapacitate it. That has since been discredited. The eyesight of the T Rex not being able to fully comprehend prey that isn't moving. That has since been disproven. Which, yeah, that has been
Oh,
discredited as
really?
nothing more than a theory. That is, they have no factual evidence that a T-Rex could not see prey if it was standing still. Which that blew my mind because that has been like probably like the most like regarded theory from this movie. Like that's the one takeaway. Is like if you run into a T-Rex, hold still, it can't see you. No, apparently that's BS. That paleontologists, they just didn't know.
Do they acknowledge any of this, any of these things that have been debunked
Um,
the in Jurassic World,
they,
or do they just
they don't
still
they don't
act
they
like?
don't really bring up
Because I
any of the theories like that. They did
it doesn't come up.
try to in the third movie they tried to make the velociraptors look more like actual velociraptors because velociraptors in real life were like three. Yeah, they're like 3 to 4
Aren't they
feet tall,
smaller?
and they had a bunch of feathers on them. So in the third one, they kind of included. They still looked like the normal Velociraptors from the first movie, but they kind of included these like kind of like I guess like quills kind of coming out of the back of their head and gave them some like various like coloration in their scales to kind of like mimic like
Mm-hmm.
feathers it, so like that was their idea to try to make them a little bit more realistic of just like okay, let's try to combine these like fantastical elements that we've included in these films with a little bit more realism, and it kind of worked. I really did like the design of the velociraptors from the third movie, but the movie itself probably not my
Yeah.
favorite.
Yeah. The third movie, there are a lot of elements that I do like. There's a lot of like ideas that I do really like the when they realize that they're in a giant cage
Yeah,
and things like that. Like that was really like there are a lot of it is just a the whole. I think my biggest frustration with the third
the
movie
characters.
is that um it's not even the character. Well, yeah, but it's not even the characters as like themselves. It's the fact that they pretend to be these like rich like philanthropists who are adventurers and want Grant to give them kind of a tour of the island, and then you find out, oh, it's because their son went missing and they want his help, and then they say to him like, you've been here before, and his like,
Yeah, his like
I
research
don't know, his
assistant was
sidekick in
like,
it, he was like, no. It's like, no, that was a completely different part of a completely different island, and I just thought that was such bullshit. Like, you went to all these lengths, and you
yeah, it's
didn't do
like
your fucking research to know that happened on a different island. Like, I just thought that was such bullshit. Like, how did they not?
yeah,
They
they
chartered a
hired they
plane.
hired
They
they
pretty
hired
much kidnapped a
mercenaries.
person. And they did all this work, and they didn't. I just
Yeah, it's like
that was my issue. That was my biggest issue because then the whole thing, like, are you
it's like
shitting
this
me?
is that was Isla
Uh,
Nublar, this is Isla
yeah.
Sornar, this is Site B. It's like and like the mercenaries like, you mean there's another island full of dinosaurs? Like we need to get out of here right now.
Um. Yeah. Going back to the first one, this was a movie that needed sequels because. So yeah, this was for me. I realized a movie rewatching this. This was a movie that's crying out for sequels because yeah, it's like we said, there's so many layers, but something that I noticed that I really appreciated was so they bring in Sattler and Grant, a paleobotanist and a paleontologist, to the park to kind of like give her, sign off and be like and endorse it and say, yes, this is a great park. And
He was
why
like
was
a
Malcolm there? Who
yeah, who
he's a
specializes in
mathematician.
chaos theory, and apparently like according to Hammond, it was his lawyer who brought him along. It's like I brought the scientist, you brought the rock star, and
Yeah.
like the lawyer's just like, oh, whatever. So it was like, I guess he was just
He great offered
yeah, no, he
amazing
yeah,
insight, and I'm glad he's there. I was more just like who specifically, but still the lawyer. Okay, because I was thinking about this like in the scene we were talking about before when they first see the dinosaurs. Grant and Sattler are just
blown
like,
away.
this isn't like they're beyond. This is not. They never. Of course, the thought. Of course, they wish they would see dinosaurs, but of course, they're dead. They're extinct. They're seeing something they never ever in a million years thought they would ever see, and you can see, and they're just like he's almost like nauseous and has to sit down like he can't handle it, and you see Ian is or Malcolm is just like he's so amazed, he's so aware of
Yeah,
what
he
they're
sees like
seeing, but he's not a
he sees the
paleontologist.
implications that this thing
He
like
see
can come with. Is like, you son of a bitch, you crazy son of a bitch, you did it. And later on in the movie, Hammond brings up like this like excellent like counterpoint of like, why'd you do this so callously? Like, you rushed this process and brought these animals that have never existed in this time period, and you flung them into the present where they don't know where they are on the food chain.
that's what I that's my the lunch scene
Yeah,
is might be my favorite scene. The dialogue and the
yeah,
acting is
but
so
yeah,
perfect
I just love like
because
Hammond's counterpoint. And it's like, well, if I had done the same thing with the American condors, yeah, it's like
mm-hmm.
they're like
Condors.
on the verge of extinction. If I open up a park and just had it filled to the brim with condors, you would not be saying anything. Yet I have done the exact same thing with extinct animals, and you're saying that this is the most reckless thing I could have ever done. And it's like, damn, that's a good counterpoint. I can't
And
argue with that.
but Ian makes the point of that's different. They died from deforestation or climate change or whatever, whereas dinosaurs died. It's because of nature. Yeah, and he says nature selected them for extinction. And then Grant makes the point. They just all make really valuable points that I feel like just right there within this conversation and the conversation when they watch
Yeah.
the eggs crack, which I'll get to in a second. It makes it very clear that this is so much more complex
Yeah,
than
it
just a
yeah,
park of
it really kind
dinosaurs.
of brings into depth
And
and just kind of brings like
yeah,
the gravity of the situation. It's like, yeah, we still don't fully know how these dinosaurs are going to react around people, especially like crowds of the public. If something goes wrong, then everyone here is liable. We still don't fully know like what all these animals are capable of. It just seems like a very reckless thing to just make this an amusement park. These animals need to be studied. We need to do more research. And it really does kind of make the whole thing seem a lot more realistic and believable, because they are treating this
yes.
as rationally as possible. They are treating this as if this is like the like most real world scenario that they can think of, and they're just trying to make this as feasible as possible. And I absolutely love the fact that they are uh, trying to make this dream happen. They are all excited, but they don't let their excitement cloud their judgment. The very reason that they were there to endorse the parks, like, we can't endorse this until we know more information.
And yes, so when they take the tour of basically how this all happened with like the DNA, and I guess Spielberg put it was just
Yeah,
because it's exposition, and we need this information, and it's important information, and that they would extract DNA from like mosquitoes from those times and would
yeah.
fill in the blanks
But
with
it also kind of
frog
begs into the
DNA,
question: if they're
and
just taking blood from mosquitoes, how do they not accidentally contaminate it with the blood of the mosquito and not just the dinosaur? I'm sure that's like explained like more in the book, but it just seems
oh,
like, wait, I feel like there's like a huge margin of error there, and also you have no idea what blood is in that mosquito.
interesting. Yeah, because I mean that's the thing is that there
Yeah,
has to be multiple types of dinosaurs, which I thought of that. But I love this scene. So they see a dinosaur being hatched, and
S-
so
yeah,
BD Wong is
yeah,
Doctor Wu,
yeah,
and I'm pretty sure I'm 90% sure he is the voice of Shang in
maybe, but
Mulan.
he all I know is that he does
BD Wong,
make a he does make a recurring
something
appearance
else he's
in
done.
the Jurassic World movies. So he is like the one like familiar face from
Okay.
the original movies that is in the first Jurassic World, and later on, Jeff Goldblum makes an appearance in Fallen Kingdom. Although it's a much more brief cameo, it is nice to see a familiar face that is so attached to this franchise.
So, but they basically come. He says like there's no unauthorized breeding because everybody's a female. They breed them that way because every embryos are already female. It's just another X chromosome. It was X chromosome, and they stop it before it gets there. And Malcolm's like,
that seems super unethical. Yeah,
you know, you're but also this is the whole life finds a way. And they're like, what? So you're saying females are going to just breed on their own? And he's like, just so. I'm saying like you're trying to control something that you can't control. And then we later see they are breeding because frogs, I guess, can be known to change sex if they're only in a single sex.
Yeah, it seems like a huge.
And so
it seems like a huge.
Start to reproduce.
Oversight on their part, which like, yeah, no, frogs they can't change sex. I like unless they like specifically chose like a frog or like a like I still don't understand why they specifically chose frog DNA when those are like frogs are amphibians. Wouldn't it have made more sense to use lizard DNA from a reptile since dinosaurs are primarily reptiles? At least from my understanding, I don't think there were very many like amphibious dinosaurs, especially in this movie. Like they didn't have like the Mosasaurus or any like or the Dilophosaurus. They didn't have any like underwater dinosaurs in this movie from what I can remember, or if they mentioned it, it was all off screen. It was all like, you know, Brontosaurus, Triceratops, T-Rex, Velociraptor. It was all like the very common like top 10 dinosaurs that anyone can name off the top of their hands, or off the top of their heads, I mean.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like a huge oversight to use frog DNA and amphibian DNA when it would have just made more sense to just use like alligator DNA or Komodo dragon, just like real world dinosaurs that exist today. Because alligators, that's something that pretty much just hasn't changed in millions of years. They pretty much like hit the peak of their like evolutionary chain, and like that's just what they've been stuck with for the longest time. So it would have made more sense to just use some of that and just mimic that. I mean, sure, like a lot of the dinosaurs probably would have looked a lot more alligator-like, but I think that would have worked.
Yeah. I was trying to ask people, like, do you think would it have cost him the same amount of money, or would it have been cheaper if he had just made like animatronic? I love the part when the lawyer, he's trying to ask, like, so they're seeing the doctors, like the InGen doctors, like just making dinosaurs, and he says like, are those? He was trying to say animatronic, but he said
autoerotic
or autoerotic, and I'm like, what?
I was like, well, we know what he's into, like, apparently.
But like, would if they were like robots?
In the words of John Hammond, I'm here to I spare no expense. So I don't think cost meant anything to him. So if it meant to ensure like the best possible quality, he would have gone for it regardless of price. Which on paper that sounds like a very fun and carefree philosophy in like a business practice. That seems wildly reckless, especially when you want to open up a family theme park. Because if that doesn't pay off, then you're in the red, and that's not going to go well for you. Regardless if you're the CEO of companies, your board of directors can vote you out if you're costing the company more money than they're actually making, which I think eventually became like a huge like plot point in the second Jurassic Park movie.
Yeah, and but the thing about Hammond is that up until even after Lex and Tim and Grant all go missing, the lawyer is dead, Nedry is missing, and Ian broke his leg, and everything's loose. He still is like, I know now. I figured out, like, we rely too much on technology, and Ellie just like slapped sense into him. Like, are you
never had control. Like, that was the illusion.
So I guess he had a flea circus, and it was like at when he was a
Yeah,
kid, or
yeah.
I don't know how, at some
I
point
actually
in his
really
life,
like that scene where
and
they're just kind of like, all the power shut off. We got to eat the ice cream before it melts because the freezer won't work. So they're just chowing down and just having like this like heart to heart of just like he's comparing like the illusion of the flea circus to the park of just like, oh, it was just all a big illusion, but I know now what I did wrong, but the illusion was that I had no control because Ellie slapped that sense into him. And yeah, that is a really powerful and emotional scene.
that's the thing is the lunch scene. He and they're all so like, yeah, like Malcolm is saying, like, this is not right. They dinosaurs and humans have never interacted, and you're bringing back something that's nature chose, like their time. They had their shot. And Ellie makes the point of, and this, she uses plants as the example, but this goes for everything. She says, like, you how do you know anything about an extinct ecosystem? So how do you think you control it? And she's like, you have plants here that are poisonous, and you pick them because they look good, but they have no idea what their century they're in. They're gonna just
Yeah,
behave as they usually would behave. And then Grant makes the point saying, yeah, like they have not, humans and dinosaurs have never interacted. And Ham is saying, like, I can't believe it. Like, you
I
guys
I
are,
hired the experts, and
and
the only yeah
he's missing the
the only
point.
one on my side is the blood sucking lawyer.
It's he missing the point that they know what he's trying to do. It's not about that. It's that you are doing something that it's not even, Malcolm says it, like, you didn't, your engineers were and doctors were questioning so hard if they could do it. They didn't stop
Yeah,
and think, should they? This because it does go against nature. You're creating something that is no longer existing and just trying to plop it back in the real world. And these are not just like a regular, yeah, they are animals, but these aren't just regular animals. They like, humans and dinosaurs did not coexist. And so it just, this is what, and there is a sequel. It's on YouTube. It's basically the top, like, I think it was like the
yeah,
top 10 Jurassic Park movies, Jurassic Park
yeah.
sequels that we'll never get. And a couple of them are so ridiculous. And some of them, though, there's two in particular, but there's one that's so good. And I'm so mad that, like, this could still, like, the idea was that the dinosaurs are breeding and reproducing so rapidly that they migrate to another
Yeah,
island because that's what animals do. And that's concerning because if they're migrating, they're they're moving, they're going to keep doing that.
yeah.
And so
I
I like,
really
that's
like that
such a
one, but
good
yeah,
idea.
I think I shared that video with you, but there were a couple in there that were kind of out there. Like they weapon.
Like the
Yeah,
half human dinosaurs that hunt drug lords, every single
yeah,
word in that sentence is stupid. Why would there
yeah.
need to be half human dinosaurs? Which the designs are, they're
I actually
terrifying, but they
really
are
like the
cool.
designs of
There was
the
one that kind
human
of,
dino hybrids.
yeah, there was one that kind of looked like, think of like the body of a velociraptor, but the head, and it kind of looked like Voldemort
Yeah.
on top of a dinosaur's
Um.
body, like the face. But like, yeah, it was a really great design. It was just, why do you need to weaponize them? Weaponizing dinosaurs is such a
Okay. So
ridiculous
you're under the idea
idea.
of weaponizing and militarizing dinosaurs is a dumb idea, correct? Oh, then you are gonna love Jurassic
Yes.
World then. Yeah,
Oh no.
you are going to fucking love that.
Oh no. But like, but then there was the idea of, like, oh, they're being weaponized. It's not even that they're being weaponized. They're being
Yeah,
weaponized to hunt
specifically
drug
drug
lords. It's
lords.
like, why? Why drug lords?
South
Why is it, like,
America,
because
I
you're in,
guess,
like,
because yeah, that's where they're
Costa
based
Rica?
off
Yeah,
of
like,
is just like an island off the coast of like South America or like Costa Rica. Yeah, like
Costa
somewhere kind
Rica.
of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
in like near South America. So it kind of makes sense because that is like that is like a prevalent problem there. That would make sense for them to do that. But um kind of going a little bit back to the human dino hybrids, one of the implications in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I'm not going to tell you outright what it is because I feel like that's kind of a spoiler. Um,
Yeah.
but with that
Go.
implication, human dino hybrids does potentially fall into the realm of that might happen now because of this. And it just seems like they could definitely go with that, and it would kind of be a bit of a stretch, but not by much. It could, like, somewhat realistically happen within the timeline of the universe that they are setting now because of kind of these random like gaps of information that are being filled that we didn't even realize were missing. Which I don't know how to feel about that, but seeing dino human hybrids in a Jurassic Park movie, especially when it started off as something like this, it just seems like we're branching off into like it's turning into like a Fast and Furious. Just started off with a car race, and now it's all about crazy heists and going into space and doing car jumps through buildings, and just it is slowly spiraled into something that is almost unrecognizable from the original. I mean, the first one is just them doing car races and stealing DVD players, and now it's them doing car heists with a tank doing loop de loops in Dubai. It's like it is completely unrecognizable from what it used to be, but it's still in the same universe. And with the progression of all these movies,
Yeah.
it makes sense that this is the next logical thing. And I feel like with the human dino hybrids, I'm not saying that like that's the next logical thing. I'm just saying with everything that's happening in like the last like movie, it is, I feel like it is more on the table now than it was for the first Jurassic World movie, where that just felt like it came completely out of left
Oh
field.
god. Oh boy.
So have fun
Oh
with
boy.
those two.
So we got to talk about care. I realize we've been talking for like over like almost an hour, and we barely have talked about. We talked a lot about Ian. We got to talk about Ellie
Yes.
and Grant, or Sattler and Grant. So they're he's a paleontologist, she's a botanist, and they're working in Montana. They just uncovered Velociraptor
Yes.
remains, correct? And this is when Hammond shows up and basically says, "Hey, I'll fund you guys for the next couple of years if you guys come and see my park and endorse my park." And
I mean, they're super excited about that.
I want to, yeah, but I got to before this. So the first time I saw this, I thought that Sattler and Grant were together, and then the second time, I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't know. And then I actually went when I was watching it this time. I looked online. There is this huge debate because it's
Yeah.
very ambiguous, and I guess Spielberg did that a little bit intentionally. Like, I guess there were scenes or lines where they were
Yeah,
calling each other honey
there
or
were a few
something.
moments
And I do
where
think,
they definitely seem like they are, or at least at one point, an item, and they're just like just very comfortable around each other, I guess is where this thing went.
yeah, it was. It's because of the line in the beginning. Okay. So there are times where, like, when they were first like uncovering the remains in the beginning, they kind of like have their arms around each other like friends, but like Grant's like hand just kind of moves and lightly touches like her butt.
Gasp.
It was really cool. I'm like, okay. And then later when he's like basically being nauseous and they're watching and they're seeing like they do move in herds, she has her arm on his knee. Like, they are just very comfortable around each other. But then there's also the line in the beginning when he says he doesn't like kids, because I thought they were a
Yeah,
couple and that he didn't like
it's like
kids, and that the whole thing with the kids makes him suddenly like kids, like, because she says, he's like, you want kids, and she's like, I don't want that kid, but I do like the idea of a bunch of little Alan Grants is intriguing. And I'm like, and so that makes it sound like they're together, or just the idea of
and,
him having kids and there being like mini me's. But then there's at the later there's also a line where, so Ian is kind of flirting
yeah,
with
and Grant is
Ellie,
like visibly
and
like
it's
jealous and like uncomfortable with like the constant flirting, which is being done like right in front of him.
But it's funny though because there's a part she's trying to get him to explain chaos theory, and it's funny because she totally knows he's flirting, but she does genuinely want to know about chaos theory, so she's just letting him. But he also, Grant says, "Do you have kids?" And he says, "Yeah." And he's like, "Are you married?" He's like, "Oh yeah, occasionally. I'm always looking for the next future Mrs. Malcolm." And then when he says something about Sattler, and he says, "Oh wait, are you two?" And Grant's like, "Yeah." And he's like, oh, "Okay." And then he kind of just leaves Sattler alone after that. And I was trying to do research, and everybody was bringing up all these points. And somebody said, in that point, that line, it could have been that he's just being protective, because the fact that he's saying he occasionally is married and he's always looking for his future ex, like that this isn't a guy and he's just being protective. And I just think this is a very weird thing to be ambiguous about, because whether they're together or not, it does not
No,
change
it really
anything in the
doesn't. And
story.
honestly, I
And I
actually kind
don't
of
really
like
care, but I feel like if they
like how
were,
ambiguous it is of whether or not they are in fact together or if they're just really close friends, because either one makes sense, and I kind of like that of not really knowing
yeah,
how to interpret this scene. I really do kind of like that. I think it's explained a little bit more in the book, and also from what I remember my dad telling me, because he read the book, and I kind of asked him a few questions a while back. The people brought to the park, there's a lot more people that are actually being like brought to the park, of like I want to say like 7 or 8 like different like people are like asked to bring to the park, like, oh, like here's like this top veterinarian in our field, like paleontologist, paleobotanist, Ian, and a few others that are just kind of like top of their field that would,
paleontologist, paleobotanist,
yeah,
Ian.
just like there's just like all these kind of different people like that
Yeah.
are like experts in their fields, like, oh, like I'm an expert in uh like zoos, and like how like the like a structural integrity of like a zoo should be in order to like properly like contain an animal and not make them feel threatened, and like keep them contained within their territory so that they feel like they are in charge of their territory. And it just like a bunch of like other people and experts, the birds, like, yeah, that makes sense why you would call that person in. They're an expert in that field in something that you're trying to accomplish. Um, and yeah, I'm kind of I do kind of like that it is a much smaller cast for the movie, because I feel like having all those experts in and
Oh yeah.
everyone kind of butting heads is like, oh no, you need this because of this, but you need this because of this, and I felt like that would have made scenes like the lunchroom scene so much more hectic and chaotic, of just people talking over each other and just throwing in their hat in the ring of, no, you need this, but no, you need this, and it just I felt like it would have detracted from like the gravity of that situation.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Um I totally agree. Especially because, so in, I think it's in the book, and there were versions of the script where this was really heavily mentioned, and it's still kind of very lightly in the movie. The idea of saying that Jurassic Park is kind of like, it's like biblical themes, and saying that it's like Garden of Eden, and you take the forbidden fruit and things go crazy and you have to leave, and that John Hammond is like essentially God is, and the thought of having all of those extra characters, because that there'd be some that are for this, and there would be some that are still against it, but there'd be some that would be in favor of the park, when really the only person they need to convince is
Yeah,
John, is Hammond. And yeah, I feel like it would be too hectic of a movie with all these extra characters. It'd be kind of like in Godzilla when there were all these characters, and we still like, it's just, it was, I mean, it was, I know it was really shitty, but like they were all so underdeveloped, and there was just like, it was just like a
yeah,
bunch of people
they
that
were
didn't do
just kind
anything.
of there to kind of provide like random bits of
Yeah.
exposition and didn't really contribute to anything outside of that. Um, but yeah,
Yeah. But I as for Sattler and Grant, I feel like it is, to me it does come off very this isn't like we know their characters and who they are, and we don't really find out that much else about them. So to me, it does seem kind of very. It's like a little pinch of authenticity because it's not like them revealing their backstories and all this is really relevant to the story. So it does kind of give it a human touch of they might be together, but it's not really a major point, so it doesn't really ultimately matter. I get that side of it. I just think it was kind of an
Yeah.
interesting way to make it ambiguous. But but I know there's versions I think it's in the book. I know there's a version where they were in a relationship. There's a version where I think it's in the book where she's his grad student and she's engaged to someone else. So I don't know. I kind of have come to the conclusion that I think I was maybe they are,
Yeah.
but either they are or they were. It's a weird because the first time because the whole debate on kids, and then by the end he, after his time with Lex and Tim, he
Likes the
clearly
idea. Yeah.
likes the idea. So that's what I thought was like his
Struggle. Yeah.
internal.
But then
But
they
yeah,
reveal in the third movie she's married to someone else and has a kid, and they're still good friends, and he's still talking with the kid. So it's just wait, were they divorced or something, or they really were just really good friends? Because yeah.
I think I part of me kind of thinks that they are together. It's just not, and they will not obviously end
Yeah.
up together, but it's just not relevant enough. But that's the thing, is because she's not, I don't think she's intentionally flirting with
No,
Ian. Ian is flirting
she's
with
just
her,
kind of,
and she's
yeah,
just
she's just kind of there.
humoring him to, they're kind, but I don't know. It's just funny because it's this thing that's not very clear, and everybody, the fact that I went on, I think it was on Reddit, and there was this whole long, nobody is
Yeah,
everyone's in different opinions
nothing
about
has
it.
been
I find
confirmed
funny.
about that. But apparently, her and Jeff Goldblum and uh, Dr. Grant, they're all three of their characters are going to be returning for the next Jurassic World movie, Jurassic World Dominion. Uh, yeah,
Which they're shooting. They went back. They went back to work. And Bryce Dallas Howard sent pictures out of she had these major bruises on her arm. So she's probably doing a lot
yeah.
of the stunt
Hopefully,
work.
she's not running in high heels again.
I think that's I think that I'm I want to I've got time. I want to see that one. I do want to see Jurassic World. I just it's not on anything. When we decided to do Jurassic Park, I'm like, I'll just gonna buy Jurassic Park because I do love it. I will, and my parents didn't. They're like, why will you buy a movie that you're only gonna watch once? I'm like, what? No, I'm gonna watch it again. I've
Yeah,
seen it. I like it. It's not really a question on if I should buy it. It's just I'd have to buy it or rent it on Amazon. Why not just spend that money and buy it, and
exactly.
then I own it? And and I couldn't find it anywhere. I ended up having to get it on Amazon, but I found so much of Fallen Kingdom, which makes sense
Yeah,
because it's the newest one, it's the most recent one. But I'm like, why is there so much of this one? And this is the one that I know for a fact is very questionable and problematic.
yeah,
I want to mention. So we were talking a little bit about Jurassic 3 with Sattler and Grant. With I appreciate this so much. So Jeff Goldblum is not in Jurassic Park 3, but he is the main
yes,
character in the second one, and then Grant is back in the third one. They are all this they're all so
yeah.
messed up from this. And I love that so much because for years, I, grew up on Harry Potter, and I remember Harry doesn't really it's more about him learning what he's capable of, and his family and things like that. It's not until a situation arises where he can't save everybody and witnesses something so dark and traumatic that it
He
changes him, and
yeah,
he's
he
messed up from
basically
it in the
gets
next installment.
PTSD from it.
And in this one, and then the sequels in Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, they're all messed up from it. And we've talked about this before, that this is also a franchise that's kind of, it's the bill. I feel like the biggest thing that was hard about making these sequels, even though I do stand by this, I do think it needed sequels, but the biggest thing that was struggle to make these a sequel is that make these sequels are, this is a situation they don't have to go back to the park. Like, it's not like, oh, it's not like in The Mummy Returns, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, Emotep rises, we got to put him back. They don't have to go back. And they Jeff Goldblum basically gets coerced into going because his
Yeah.
girlfriend has gone, and Grant is, again, doesn't want
He
anything
he
to do with it,
he
and
basically gets
he,
bribed into it because he needs
he's
the money for his dig, and when he kind of figures out what's up, they just straight up knock him out and more or less kidnap him at that point. So it's like, oh great, now I'm stuck here.
but I love the part when he
Yeah.
meets the kid, and the kid says, like, I've read both your books, I like your first one better because you liked dinosaurs back then, because he hadn't obviously come across dinosaurs, and this changed his opinion. So I just love the fact that this definitely
Yeah.
damaged them in a way. And like, Jeff Goldblum is very messed up, especially because he did go, he, what was it, they like signed
Yeah.
like non-disclosures or something, and they gave him money, but he still went out and said this is what happened, and everybody thought he was crazy
Something like
or
that. Yeah,
something.
and of course he's like
Yeah,
overprotective of his daughter who really wants to go there with him. Um, she,
I think the daughter was just an excuse because they just wanted
yeah,
more like kids, like Lex and Tim. But Lex and
it made
Tim,
sense for them to be there.
we it made sense for them to be there, but it also, they don't get enough credit. They were a
Yeah,
really
no, like one
great
of my favorite scenes of this
addition.
whole movie is the kitchen scene with the velociraptors, and also like right before that there is
Yeah.
something in the final version of the movie, as the velociraptors like kick open the door and Lex and Tim are like hiding in like on like one of the adjacent aisles, like to the doorway so the velociraptors can't see them. You see behind one of the velociraptors one of like the like puppeteers like adjusting one of the velociraptor's tail so the thing is tilted upright, and he like ducks out of frame. It's only there for like 2 seconds, but you see a guy adjust a velociraptor and get out.
What? I did not. What?
Yeah,
I've never
just
noticed that. Is this
yeah,
when they're first
just
going into the
you
kitchen?
can
The
find this on
Velociraptors.
YouTube. It's in the final version of this movie. I didn't know about this till like probably like a couple years ago, but as soon as I did and I noticed it, I can't now not see it whenever that scene pops up, and it's so funny.
Oh,
Um,
that's. Have you ever like noticed like there's these always these tiny just like filmmaking or production mistakes or editing mistakes, and you just
no,
can't unsee them. Like there's a scene in and there's a scene in Forrest Gump where he runs by the same people twice in the DC
Yeah,
scene,
well,
and I
I mean,
can't unsee it.
I actually kind of like that. It kind of adds like a little bit of charm to this movie. And there's also another scene in this movie where this is towards the end where the T-Rex like grabs the Velociraptor and is like thrashing around in its mouth. There's a single frame of footage in the final movie where the Velociraptor disappears from the T-Rex's mouth as it's thrashing it about. It just completely disappears. And it, I remember I only learned about this because of the VFX Artists React series on YouTube by Corridor Digital. Which, if you guys haven't checked them out, definitely do that. They are widely entertaining, and they definitely know what they're talking about. Um, and they kept making the jokes like, "Oh my god, could you imagine if this happened anywhere else in this movie? It would completely ruin the movie. Like, could you imagine if the T Rex like disappeared for a frame in that movie during that scene instead of Velociraptor? It would completely ruin the movie just because of that. Just the T Rex. It's
They
like
can teleport
they
now.
disappear. They do disappear. But yeah, it is just kind of crazy just seeing like
Yeah.
because because like this technology was like brand new. Like they had to like ILM like worked like overtime on this. Like ILM's entire backbone was dedicated to this movie and making all the CG and special effects. But like the main thing that they had for reference were all like the animatronics that uh the movie did make. Like they made like a full animatronic T-Rex. So it was like, okay, perfect. We have a frame of reference for like light refraction and coloration and how this thing moves. And uh during the scene where the T-Rex like first kind of like breaks out and attacks like all the Jeeps, it was raining so bad that it actually caused the like foam latex skin of the T-Rex suit to get like way down so much that they actually had to stop, and it was causing the servos and the electronics in it to seize. So the T-Rex was for like a good chunk of time was actually moving on its own. It's like that is terrifying.
They so I guess Kathleen Kennedy did some work.
Yes.
She was a producer or something. She seems to sneak her
Yeah,
way onto a
I
lot of
just
movies.
looked up
I'm
her
always like,
like
oh,
IMDb. She's just kind of just in the background for a lot of stuff. Mostly for like Steven
but she
Spielberg
apparently
stuff.
they yeah. But apparently she said like that the T Rex, it was
It was a
animatronic. It
robot,
was
but
a
yeah,
robot. But
for like just like the break for like a little bit
they
of
would be
time because of like all the rain like weighing down the suit and like kind of like messing with like all the electronics and circuits inside. It was kind of spasming and seizing and moving erratically and uncontrollably for a brief period of time. And it also didn't help that the
yeah. She
yeah,
said they were like
it also didn't help that
yeah.
the suit itself, like all the skin and latex, absorbed all the skin. So this the it actually like was uh uh barely being supported by like the metal frame and wiring inside of it. So it was actually like starting to like crumple under its own weight because it had absorbed so much water.
She said they would be like eating lunch or something, and then it would just malfunction and start moving, and they would all just like because it's one of the it's like this is fake, but there's that tiny part of you like holy shit like I just thought that'd be so like everybody freezes like wait it's not alive right okay I'm gonna go back to eating like um yeah the special effect it holds up pretty well. There are some things that look a little, but it for most part holds up
Yeah.
pretty well.
I mean, for
The special
especially for
effects in
something
this
that came
movie.
out in 1993, like this movie. I mean, this movie came out before, or like more or less kind of like around the same time as uh, the Mummy. So the fact that it was, yeah,
A couple years before,
the
yeah,
fact that
yeah.
it came out like around the same time and how well like the visual effects because ILM Industrial Light and Magic did a lot of the special effects for both of these movies, and they both look phenomenal. They still look really good. I mean, there are a couple
Mm-hmm.
bits where it's like you can tell like something isn't really there, and like they're just like kind of like pantomiming or shadow fighting. But the times where like they actually have like an actual like model there or an animatronic or puppet, it looks so much better, and I absolutely love it when
Mm-hmm.
movies go the extra mile. And I know it's like a lot more costly and expensive to make animatronics and models and puppets and stuff like that, but it pays off so much in the long run.
Practical always
Yeah,
looks
I
better.
100% agree.
Like it. I mean, I'm not saying CGI. It's so CGI can be more questionable sometimes. There's a lot of great movies with really really great CGI, but there's also a lot of movies with a lot of bad CGI because yeah, CGI is cool and it's not
And it's
there, but at
also
the same
cheaper.
time, it's like, but when it is there,
It
it is. Oh,
is.
it is cheaper.
I mean, think about it. Is it is it cheaper or not to have a bunch of CGI T-Rexes rampaging through a completely CGI city, or just have 10 like or have a bunch of animatronic dinosaurs rampaging through a real set that you had to build? Yeah, it
Okay.
just
Okay.
it makes sense
Yeah.
in short term to make something CG because you can do that over and over again and not have to worry about like cost to rebuild a set, or if like
Yeah.
an animatronic malfunctions that could like bog down an entire thing. Um, but yeah, in
Yeah.
CG you can just like run a bunch of like renderings of, oh, like this building needs to collapse this way. It's like, oh, I didn't like that. Let's collapse it in a different way. It's like, yeah, I like it that much. That looks way better. It just it does pay off in like the short term and sometimes in the long run, depending on how well it looks. But a lot of the times, you kind of just get this like I don't want to say like rubbery or fake looking, but a lot of the times, if a rushed CG like effect does, if you don't take the proper like attention or care toward it, it does look fake, and people do notice. Like with the
Yeah.
2017 Mummy movie, like there were a lot of like moments in that movie where it's like, okay, this looks really fake, this looks really bad. This would have definitely paid off if they had just simply done a practical effect of something rather than just, oh, have this guy get swarmed by spiders. It's like, no, that looks really fake. Why don't we just have like an actual like spider on him, like a bunch of spiders on his back, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like that definitely would have looked really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and yeah, I love like another scene that I really love, and it's when the they're trying Grant and the kids are trying to get back to the main part of the park and get back to everybody, and they're on the field,
Oh,
and the
yeah,
dinosaurs start flocking because they're running away from a T-Rex, but they don't see what they're running away from. And I just love that scene. I don't like visually. I love that scene. Just like uh, they're running. The camera is obviously moving, and they're looking around like freak. It's just. But also to me, it also shows the Grant and the relationship with the kids is
yeah.
really really great because in the beginning, yeah, we
He's just
talked. He
avoiding
doesn't
them and
really like
locking them in
kids,
the cars.
and it's so funny. So the two kids show up, and uh Timmy, the kid, one of the kids, the boy, the brother loves dinosaurs, and he really likes Grant, and he's like, I actually read this book where blah blah blah, and Ellie is just laughing because Grant's trying to get away from the kid. And then he puts Timmy in a car, and then the Lex is like, oh, she says I should ride with you, it'll be good for you. And he's just like,
it's like
so.
it's like
And
I
then
can't win.
when they get out of the car, because the Triceratops scene, and Lex takes Grant's hand. She falls, and he grabs her, and then she's just holding his hand, and he's just like, ugh. But then later during that scene, the flocking scene, he's gripping and holding because they went through
Yeah,
so much shit
like
the
the
night
the
before.
Jeep falling out of the tree and almost crushing Tim and Grant.
Also, they almost drowned
Yeah,
in mud.
yeah,
The kids, which like they're stuck in the car, and this is okay. So this scene, so they Ellie stays back with the other employee working there because the Triceratops
yeah.
is sick,
Because she thinks that
and
it ate some of the poisonous plants that not Grant, Hammond put around because they look pretty, which
yeah,
she protested earlier on in the movie during the lunch scene. Um, yeah. Go ahead.
and yeah, and no, but I also just love the scene because they're just like they're seeing one like up close now, a dinosaur up close, other than the
Yeah,
one that they saw hatching, and she's crying, and Grant's laying on it, which resulted in that meme of Grant like putting his head on
yeah,
anything. But they move on. She stays with him. They move on, and the storm's hitting. They're at the T-Rex site, and before when they're there, there's a goat there, and Grant makes a point saying
eat. It
it
wants to
doesn't want
hunt.
to just eat; it wants to hunt, and you can't just make something go against an animal go against 65 million years of
Yeah,
you know. And this scene is when, the T-Rex comes out. The lawyer just
bolts.
I know that he bolts, but I'm also like, I get he's clear. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Like, even the kids who are terrified know it's probably not smart to get out of the car. And Lex grabs the light because she's trying to get the other guys in the car to see, hey,
Yeah.
we're in here. Like, but I love the lawyer bolts, and then Grant's like, where's he going? And Ian's just like, when you gotta go, you gotta go, because he runs and hides,
Yeah.
hides in the bathroom. And Timmy, of course, is screaming, like, turn the light off, and this makes the T-Rex
Yeah, because
hit the car, flip it over.
flashing the light all over the place.
But also, that's the thing, is I love that I went back and forth because I'm like, is this scene stupid or necessary? And I realize Timmy's not the one doing it. It's Lex, because she doesn't know that this is going to make things more unsafe. But I also understand from her perspective, there was an adult figure in the car. He left us. There are two adults nearby. We need to let them know we're in the car. Like, I was like, that's very realistic. But they're like, basically the car is flipped. They're drowning in mud. And so Grant, they finally realize what's going on. They're like, it's like they're watching it in slow-mo, because they know, like, okay, we got to stay still. But then they realize, holy shit, it's like going after the kids. And Grant comes out with like what is it?
No, it's a road flare.
It's just a flare, a road flare. And he's like getting the T-Rex's attention, and did he throw it, or was he about to throw
Grant
it? But he throws it,
and it, since that was the thing that was moving, the T-Rex immediately started going after the road flare, and then Ian got out of there, did the exact same thing, but since he was running when he threw it, the T-Rex kept chasing him to the bathroom and injured Goldblum and then ate the lawyer.
I just thought this, because I was thinking the T-Rex was he about to go for the light? I guess.
It was going for the light that that Alan Grant threw, but as it was running, Ian bolted out, did the exact same thing, which made the dinosaur completely ignore the first road flare and go after Ian, who then started running. And since he was moving, that made him a target and started hunting him and crashed in the bathroom. And then, no more lawyer.
Because I get why he went after him. I just thought he was about to go after the other flare, and they would have been able to get. And I was just like, I mean, I know he was trying to help, and he did help, but it wasn't like Grant's plant. Grant's plant hadn't failed yet.
I don't know. I think he was just like, oh, I'll help too, and yeah.
I mean, he also does. He has kids, so I understand why he wants to help. And he even, like, later, when they're, the park shut down, they're stuck in the cars, and Grant goes to the other car and to see what's going on. And Grant goes back, and Ian's like, "How are the kids?" He's like, Grant's like, "I don't know, they're fine." He's like, "Kids get scared." Like, he's a father, and he actually knows there's like a protocol, essentially. There are things that he knows about kids that Grant wouldn't think about because he's not a kid person. And so I understand why he got involved. I just was like, if you had waited a couple of seconds.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, I'll help too. It was like, because like, he was probably thinking, like, if Grant moves, then the T-Rex will go after him. So like, I'll distract you with my road flare and get out of there in the process.
Okay.
It was just, since he didn't know, like, the behavior of a T-Rex, he probably didn't realize that if I'm running, the thing will chase me and will go after the road flare. But Grant knew that if I don't move, the thing won't chase me. So he thought that, oh no, Grant put himself in danger. I got to go help him to make sure that he can save the kids. So, like, it makes sense for it to happen because he didn't have that information. Grant did.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was literally just like, if you waited maybe a few seconds, because his plan didn't fail yet, it
was just
that.
Like that, like, kind of area of expertise. I kind of really like that they did kind of like show that, like, this man is an expert. He knows what he's talking about in terms of the dinosaurs. Because later on, the kids are like camping out in a tree, and they're being approached by all these like brontosauruses, and it's like they're the kids are freaking out, especially Lexi. It's like, no, get away, they're monsters. Like, no, 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 they're like giant cows. Like they're not gonna hurt you. And they try feeding them and giving them some like branches, and they're petting the dinosaurs. Like that, it was like a really like wholesome scene. It was just like, no, like they're not monsters. They're just animals, and this is their nature. Like he doesn't vilify
Yeah.
any of the animals in the park, even when they are trying to kill them. They're just acting in their nature.
Yeah.
He treats them
Yeah.
more or less with like,
It's not
yeah.
Jaws 4.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
just treats them as if they were just like normal animals. Like, oh yeah, no, like that was a tiger. Of course a tiger's gonna hunt, and this is just a cow or a giraffe. It's just going to eat some leaves from a tree and more or
Yeah.
less leave us alone. We pose no threat to it, and it poses no threat to us, so we're fine here. And I just really liked scenes like that where he's just like able to kind of show his passion to the dinosaurs to like the kids, which I feel like the kids were kind of there to kind of like be a proxy for the audience because
Yeah.
they were just completely blank slates for the movie, which worked well for like the audience to kind of like fill the role, like be in their shoes of just not knowing how to
Yeah.
react to all these different things. Which I absolutely love when
Yes.
movies do that. They kind of put like a blank slate character that the audience can empathize with.
This brings up I couldn't find it. I was looking for it for this. Um the guy that did the top 10 sequels we'll never see. He did another video. At least I think it was him. Uh like it popped up with this. That's how I found it. It was like quotes or scenes from the book, and like how they differed from the movie or something like that. But there was this line that, and just reading, so I haven't read the book, but
Yeah.
just reading some of the lines that Ian says, Jeff
Oh,
Goldblum was perfect.
100%.
Like I can't, like I haven't even read the book and I know he was perfect casting. But there was a line, there's a whole like part of some dialogue where he's like, how do they know to hunt us? Like, and I was thinking, and I can't find it because I was thinking, well, you know, I mean, as any animal, you see something that's potentially a threat, you're either curious
Hungry.
or you see it as hungry, yeah, or you see it as prey. But I was trying to like, I'm so mad. Could not find it, but like, but because it made the point of like how
Yeah.
smart they are, or the fact that yeah, these are creatures that we have not coexisted with them. So the fact that they're smart enough to know that like we can be a threat to, it was just I can't I hopefully I'll find it whenever we get to the
Yeah.
sequels because it was a really good line and I could not find it. But yeah, I agree. I do really like that they treat them that even though this is terrifying, they are animals.
Yeah.
Like they're
Yeah,
just
like
doing what
they're not
animals
acting like out of any
do.
malicious intent. They're hungry and they see you as a source of food. Um, and I also kind of want to talk about like one of my favorite characters. We haven't really mentioned it before, and that would be Muldoon, the
I knew that
hunter,
was coming. Yeah.
who I really like him because he like in like the very
Yeah.
beginning of this movie we see like a bunch of workers trying to load what we later find out a velociraptor into its pen, and that goes wrong and it eats one of the workers as they're like tasing it, and Muldoon is like trying to save this worker. He's like holding on to him, he's just yelling, shoot her, shoot her. And later on in this movie, like that experience kind of carries on with him and kind of has like a vendetta against the velociraptors, specifically against them. um
Yeah.
and he pretty much like works like very closely like around their pen, knows like pretty much everything about them. It's like, oh yeah, like there were a few of them, but the big one killed all but two of them. So it's like they are extremely fast, they're problem solving, they attacked the fence in coordinated strikes whenever workers would feed them, so we have to feed them with this crane. And they just lower a
And
full cow. It's like,
yes.
oh yeah, they're pack hunters. They attack from the sides and then one distracts from the front, and that's how they get them. And it's just he has so much like intimate knowledge about the Velociraptors that when they eventually break out, it I really like that they kind of like pit him like against them like a man versus nature kind of thing, and he's just such like an experienced hunter, and just like has like this really like pimped out shotgun, and he knows as like, oh, they're following us, you need to get to the electrical shed, run,
Oh yeah.
I'll distract them.
Oh yeah. That scene is just so great. That like he say like because
It's
we're
like they're
being
watching
hunted,
us,
because realizing like holy shit, like
and he's so calm
yeah.
about it too. It's
It
like,
was,
yeah, we're being hunted right now. It's like, you run.
and even when he's about to die, he sees it and then realizes, and I realize Grant. This was foreshadowing in the very beginning with the kid. Grant says, like, show basically says, like, use how they hunt is that, which apparently they don't work in
Yeah,
packs. Apparently that's something
yeah,
else that's being debunked. But in this, he says that, like, one will, you see one and then you don't know that your others are closing in on you. And so even though Muldoon sees one and then realizes that's the decoy one. That's the one that's supposed to distract him because he doesn't notice there's one next to him, and he's a
yeah.
clever girl. He's
I
not even like
he
mad.
kind
He's
of
just
plays it
like,
off as like, well played, well played, Velociraptor.
yes,
He
exactly.
doesn't even like seem like, yeah, he doesn't seem mad about it. He's just like, he's just impressed by it almost, of just like, clever girl.
The Velociraptors, they really built up the Velociraptors because I think as an audience, I wasn't really familiar with Velociraptors. I think I maybe knew the name, but I didn't know
What
like,
they fully
because I
were.
think no, I knew more of T
Yeah,
Rex, which I think most people do, and that is like the first villain. Well, maybe not the first, but one of like the, in air quotes, villainous, like antagonists that they come across, and then you realize like that the scene with the Velociraptors being fed right before the lunch scene. That's when they really start to realize there's a lot of things here that aren't right and shouldn't be happening, and that's what really that's kind of what starts to change Ellie and
yeah, because
Grant's
it's
mind.
like, oh, these
Um,
things like completely like eviscerate a fully grown cow in
Cow,
like 2 minutes. And it's like, that is
yeah,
terrifying.
and the fact that they're being like, oh no, they're still locked. They're still locked in their pen, and then oh my god, no, they're out, and that and it's just the realization that they are so much worse than any of the other, like way worse than the T-Rex, and like it's just there, we know they exist, we don't know that much about them, and it's not until they're on the loose. And I do love the kitchen scene where like they are just so smart, and they're like, and like Spielberg loved that scene of like one's using its claw as like in Morse code essentially, which I
Yeah,
thought was kind of weird, but talking, but essentially communicating with the others, trying to
yeah,
find the kids.
yeah,
Um,
I also like that
they're
they're kind of
yeah,
like checking each and every aisle, just kind of cycling through it in waves of them just kind of like doing like a thorough search rather than them just kind of like, yeah, just running around
running in
scampering
and
about all over. Like if I threw my dogs in there and like had them like, oh, I need you guys to find me, they will just sprint. Yeah, they will either
wander
like wander
around.
around or just like
Yeah,
sprint to like the nearest sound they hear and act purely on instinct. Whereas these guys, the Velociraptors, like methodically and meticulously like sweep every single row and every single aisle of the kitchen until they eventually like hear noises and follow them and like investigate. Like they use like very sensible problem solving skills, and I think that is just makes them so much more
yeah,
terrifying than just the T-Rex, which is just a behemoth that you can't physically stop.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And yeah, the ending is just so like they're going through the air vents, and the one like Lex is on like a opening of a vent, and it pushes its head up, and she's like holding on and almost
Yeah,
falls down. Like they're, can you imagine? Like they're, do you really think their mom is? I feel like their dad, especially because you find out they say it kind of in the beginning that the mom that John's John's daughter is going through divorce. So I'm like, I can't. Can you imagine? I feel like the dad, especially, is going to be are like.
Is
I don't really know if I feel comfortable
Yeah,
with them hanging
yeah, you're
around
not hanging out
Grandpa
with Grandpa
anymore.
anytime soon.
Okay, like, yeah, that's fine. Um, yeah, and see, I want to bring this up because I was. This was, especially the first time I watched it. There was one thing that bothered me about Jurassic Park. And then the second time I watched it, I think I forgot. And I'm like, wasn't there something that bugged me? And then the third time, I think, oh, yeah, it was this. The one thing that I have an issue with, and it was just, it should have been introduced earlier, was the fact that, so Lex, in the very end, when the Velociraptor is trying to get into the control room, she's the one, she's like a
Yeah,
hacker, and she's finding the right file. And we only know that she's a hacker because she says this in dialogue early, a
like I
little bit
want to say
earlier
like
in the
30
movie.
minutes before this. Yeah,
Yeah, and I do appreciate that it was just like in the background. It wasn't like a big deal, but it kind of came off to me as they realized they needed to introduce this and they threw it in there, or like because they decided they wanted her to play more of a role in the
yeah,
end because she hasn't played a huge role other than being a big
yeah.
sister. And and it just bothered me that the way where it should have been, even if there was a line of dialogue of like Hammond saying like, I can't believe I got you off your computer or something like that in the beginning. That's my only thing. If they had introduced that earlier, because it was useful, important information. It's about her, and we needed it, but I didn't like I didn't like
That
when it
also
was
that
introduced.
also kind of
It
reminds
just
me.
came.
I think it was just like an old like college humor skit, where they were pretty much like had like all the like basically it was just like a bunch of cast members of like College Humor and the actual actor who played the lawyer in the movie, and they're all like they're being confronted by the T-Rex. It's like, now who should I eat? I'm gonna eat the expendable lawyer with no character background and no character arc. And it's like, no, wait, what are you talking about? Like, why don't you eat like one of these two? Like he's pointing to like Grant and Elliot. It's like, oh no, like I'm a paleontologist. Like I know exactly like how to avoid this and survive on the island. So it would make sense that I wouldn't be eaten. It's like, okay, well, what about her? It's like, oh, well, I'm a paleobotanist, so I know like all the plants here, so I'm also like equally equipped as him. It's like, okay, I guess. Well, what about the kids? Like, oh, I'm a hacker. It's like, really? You're a hacker? It's like, well, what about the kids? Like, I'm a kid. Of course, I'm not going to get eaten. It's like, and it's like, no, don't eat me. I am actually the kid's father. And the kid's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, it's very clear
Yeah,
who's gonna die
because he
in
has
this
he has he
movie.
has no character value
um,
other than being the greedy lawyer.
yeah, and um, we also Timmy cannot catch a
No, he
break.
gets
He goes
electrocuted.
through, so like he first is almost drowning in mud and he can't climb out because the seat is his feet are caught under the seat. The car goes over like off the road and into a tree. How he survived, it's
Yeah.
amazing how he survived
Gets
that.
chased
He
by
then
Yeah, he
he
gets
and
chased
Grant
by that car as
the,
he's climbing out of the tree.
as they climb out. And then I do love this line because he has a bunch of really great like lines of the car is falling and Grant realizes, okay, we'll duck and we'll hit the Cecil,
Yeah.
protect. And then he's just like, well, we're back in the car again. And then later when they're climbing the tree, he's like, I don't like trees. And Lex says something, she's like, and he's like, well, you weren't in the last one. Like, but then he gets
And just gets
electrocuted
full.
and has to be
Yeah.
resuscitated. Like I'm like, he cannot
It's like
catch a
this
break.
kid is
Like,
the most durable thing in this entire movie. He goes through.
I
This guy could
know.
probably like. I was like half expecting like, is the T-Rex just gonna eat him in like one bite and he's just gonna like crawl out of it because like the thing didn't actually eat him, it just swallowed him like a pill. It was like I was like half expecting it's
Yeah,
like,
I know.
what is this kid just gonna like, oh, there's gonna be like a stampede of like brontosauruses and they're all gonna like miraculously like step over him, except yeah, just like everything that could happen to this kid does happen to this kid, and he like walks it off like it's almost nothing, except for he does walk with like a noticeable limp after the
Yeah.
yeah, the electrocution,
electrocution.
but it's just like, all right, I'm just gonna pig out in this buffet.
Also, oh yeah, I love that scene. And there's so much like cake and all. It's just nothing but
Yeah,
like desserts. It's like after what they went
it's like
through,
pig out.
yeah,
You
go
you
for it.
deserve it.
So when they're turning the power back on, and we know they're about to turn the power back on, but like Grant, so before when they get to the fence because they realize they got to climb over it, and Grant puts his hands on it and then pretends to be getting shocked, which is like he's just come such a long way. Now he's intentionally trying to like
Yeah,
scare them and make
and
them
I like
laugh,
how
but
even the like one of the
yeah.
kids is like, that's horrible. It's like that was great.
When they're climbing and Lex is like, I bet I can get over before you. And Grant's like, it's not a race. And we're seeing Ellie starting to like power up, and you're just like, it is a race. Go faster. Like,
Time is a
oh,
factor. Move it.
oh, speaking of which, we didn't talk the scene where they find. I love this scene so much when they go out looking for everybody. One of the cars are missing. No
Yeah,
one's around, and there's the realization of like everything's down. The T-Rex can just go anywhere in the park, and they find Ian. His leg's broken. They put him in the car, and then the T-Rex scene, and
yeah,
then after the T-Rex scene, he's like, "Oh, will that be on the
yeah. It's like
tour?"
must go faster. You
I
must go
really want.
faster.
Yeah, is she screaming? Is Ellie screaming shift or shit?
Probably shift. I honestly don't know. Either one works. The
But I can't
I
tell
mean,
she's shit, or she's
the
screaming
movie was
shift.
PG-13, so it very well could have been shit, and it still would have worked.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
Okay, so I'm like, because like it's not that it really matters. It's just that it sounds like she's saying an F,
She very well
but I
could.
can't.
It
Yeah,
it was kind of hard to decipher that, and I never really put too much thought into it. I just kind of like chalked it up as just like incoherent
yeah,
screech. um,
yeah.
but yeah, we also get the iconic image of bare-chested Jeff Goldblum in the "paint me like one of your French girls" pose.
The way he's just sitting, it's like, are you doing this
Yes.
intentionally? I
Oh,
feel like he is. Like I
100%.
totally. But then the joke, then that other meme of it's
Yeah,
his
yeah.
stomach, and then
Grant's laying
Grant is
against
like,
it. I love that. I actually found out that they just recently made a Funko Pop of the shirtless Jeff
oh yeah,
Goldblum
yeah.
doing that pose, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, and I know that scene's and it's on him for a while. The camera when he's just like laying there shirtless, just like in his French girl pose. The camera's on him for
It's
a
like,
long time, and he's not
enjoy,
talking or doing
ladies.
anything.
He was probably doing that to like,
Yeah.
oh, uh, hey Ellie. It was like that was just like his way of like flirting with her.
So yeah.
It's like, hey
Hey,
Ellie.
yeah. Oh, I'm
Oh
injured.
no, I'm
Oh yeah.
injured. Someone take care of me. And then like Hammond like kisses him, like, no, no, not you.
There's actually so there's two things I want to bring up here. One, so later when they got to turn the power back on, and Hammond and Ellie's like, okay, I'll go do it, and Hammond's like, well, shouldn't it be me because he's the man and she's the woman, and she's like rolling her eyes, like, we'll have a talk about
Yeah,
sexism
we'll have
later,
a
like after
talk
go
about sexism in
get
survival
the power.
situations later.
But I was more because I'm trying to decipher this, like, at his end, I don't think he meant it like you're not capable. It was more of he felt he should do it because he's the man, which is still bullshit. But like he also is a lot older than her. He's from Scotland. Like I didn't look at it as him being like a dick. I more looked at him in his head. He was just like thinking, oh, I should, but also forget the fact that you're the man. You have a limp. Even if this wasn't like a sexism thing, you have a limp. You would be the worst person to go
Exactly.
do this. But I love when she's like rolling her eyes, like, really, like, seriously, like, but the other thing is, so Jeff Goldblum. So there's part where he's like speaking into the camera in the car, and Hammond says, "I really hate that man." And I know it meant to be funny, but I was also like, why specifically does he hate him? Does he hate? Has he ever met him before this? And if
No,
he hates
I
him
think
so much,
he,
why would he call
I
him for
think he
Lost
was
World?
just I think he just more or less said that because he was just like being an annoying, pretty much just an annoying jerk the entire thing of just like, oh, are we gonna see any
Yes,
dinosaurs on this actual dinosaur park? Because up to that point on their tour, like the tour
they
guide is just
hadn't.
like their automated like driver is just like saying like, here you will see the Dilophosaurus in the Cretaceous period, just like full on like kind of like an elevator like sales pitch of like all these dinosaurs and no one's seeing anything. So Ian's just like hamming it
Yeah,
up for like their like Jeep cam. It's like, hey, are we gonna see any dinosaurs? So it's like Hammond's just like, oh, I hate that guy. He's such a dick.
yeah.
um,
I mean, it was funny. It was just like, I'm like, what did this guy do to
and
you?
I honestly forget why he called Jeff Goldblum for the second one because it's been a oh god, it's been a few years since I've seen the second one. So I don't fully remember why he was hired and not
Yeah.
Dr. Grant or
Other than
Ellie.
the fact that his girlfriend went
Yeah, I
ahead.
think that was like
Yeah.
really like the only reason because I think I think like the dialogue that went on was like, oh yeah, I called them and they refused. They don't ever want to go to the island again. And I think it's like, oh, like well there is this one person there, but yeah, I think it was just that's the only reason that he could get him to go was because his girlfriend was there. Um,
That's the
yeah,
thing is, like I said, it would have been if they could have found a reasonable, a really good way to get Grant and Sattler to go to Site B, like that would I would have if I because that's hot. Like we said, they don't want to go back. They don't have to go
yeah,
back. So like, and if only they could have, if like, because I feel like I mean I don't know. It was like I yeah, it's also been a while since I've watched Lost World. It was just Jeff Goldblum is the only one from the original, so you suddenly just have all these
yeah.
new people
And
that
I
you
also
know.
remember that Vince Vaughn is in the movie as like
Yeah, a
yeah, like a
documentarian.
photojournalist or something like that. Um, and they pretty much just like act like eco terrorists at some point in the movie where they just release all the dinosaurs that all the InGen like security like captured for like their site in San Diego that they want to build, which seems like a really dumb idea.
I mean,
That just seems super
yeah,
dangerous.
yeah, yeah. But it also seemed they were bred on this. So, God, how much money does
Yeah,
he have?
two
He
islands,
owns
an
two
entire like
islands.
genetic research team that can just clone dinosaurs out of like the most minuscule DNA from a mosquito and then has enough money to withstand all like the lawsuits from all the workers that died, the random rich girl's family from the beginning of the second movie. So it's like,
Hmm.
and then have enough money left over in their company to then rebuild that like actually build the park like 20 years later in Jurassic World because it's still the same company.
Is Bryce Dallas Howard? Is she related to John
I don't
Hammond?
think so. I don't think it. I don't think so. It's never brought up. Um, the only thing
Okay,
that's ever brought up was the actual CEO was like, mm, I forget his actual name, but it's like, oh, it's like my friend Dr. Hammond always say, spare no expense, and that's really like the only time Hammond's ever brought up in Jurassic World.
okay. Um, yeah, actually, I forgot to mention this earlier. Even though it is there are flaws in it, I do appreciate that they beat because this could have just been Island of Dinosaurs. So I appreciate that there is like they do give an explanation on it, and there is a science base. And I know it is a little bit to a lot. A lot of it is kind of bullshit, but I do appreciate that they made the effort of it being science based because apparently of like how they brought dinosaurs back because apparently there is a paleontologist who she apparently found red blood cells and soft tissue in fossilized bones of a T-Rex, which kind of means cloning could happen.
Yeah.
Like, that is something that could happen. Like, and I just appreciate that so much, that there is that aspect, that they did put in the effort to give us a logical reason on why there are dinosaurs
I do like that, because
in the world.
that is a thing. Like, cloning is a thing in this world. Like, I remember in, I think, 7th or 8th grade, learning that um it was a sheep named, I believe, Dolly, um
Oh yeah.
was cloned. They basically just like cloned like an embryo from a sheep, and then put that embryo in the womb of a, like, a a sheep donor, and then it gave birth to a sheep that was identical to the sheep that it was cloned, and it was since the
See,
very first
cloning,
clone.
because when we all think of like in like, kids animation and movies, there's cloning. There was always the idea of just like, kind of think of like a like airport security type of machine. You just walk through a thing and then you're cloned.
Yeah.
Like, it always came off like that, when it's like, no, you still have to be there still needs to be like a reproduction aspect of it.
Yeah.
It's not,
And
it's not
also, it would
just,
take a lifetime to grow a full mature clone,
yes.
which was another thing that, like, it doesn't just clone you from like the exact moment you were cloned, which I kind of think is kind of cool that it is like that. Like, we're not at the point in like technology. Like, I think ever since like the whole Dolly clone experiment, I think cloning has been like made like illegal due to unethical genetic research or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think like that's actually a thing that you can do anymore, unless you want to be super sketchy and illegal about it. Um,
Unless you want to be a super villain.
yeah, I will
Yeah.
clone an army of cows, because I think yeah, you can
The war is coming.
yeah, the war is
I
coming.
want my army of cows.
Move over. I'd watch that movie.
That's the tagline.
I'd watch that movie.
I would totally watch
Oh
that.
no, the evil Dr. Bovine is striking again. That's bullshit.
And it's just cow puns like the whole.
I can't.
Let me give you a tip. Like cow tipping.
No. This is utterly ridiculous.
It's like, move over. There's a new what would be in town? A new cow in town? A new what in town?
I don't know. You're forcing me into a
like,
box.
Okay. Move over.
All right.
Yeah.
So is there? I think we can kind of just jump into like the final segment of this movie. Of, do you think this could actually happen?
You know. Okay, I will say this movie is. I feel like I'm gonna. There are a lot about things about it that I feel like, yes. I think there's a lot of obvious the whole trying to, because the basis of this movie is control.
Yeah.
And controlling something that you cannot. So I feel like the characters are very realistic. I feel like I was watching and I was like thinking, I think there was just a lot of aspects that I didn't find realistic, and then I came up with like a counterpoint. Like, I was thinking, like, why would all of these engineers and like they're all acting like when Ian says, like, how do you know they're all female? Like, and they're acting like, and when he says, like, life finds a way, and they're saying, what are you saying? Like, or it's saying females can just reproduce on their own. And it's like, how do you not take into consideration, he's making the valuable point, yet it's like, he's like saying no, but life finds a way, that it's gonna, what you're doing is super unnatural. So I realize that if all of these engineers probably are, I mean, they're getting paid a lot, but it's not like the same as, like, because they would never have been able to hire people like Grant or Sattler because they think this is unnatural.
Yeah.
So I realized they're like anybody that probably would disagree is probably not
Yeah,
working.
they hired a bunch of yes men, is what you're saying.
So
Okay.
yes, so I do think there. I mean, could it happen? I guess clearly, I know that there is like I don't know if that's that was on IMDb, so I have no idea if that's since been debunked. That whole cloning is close, but like in this world, I think that it is. There are a lot of things about this movie that I think are really, really real that I find
Okay.
very believable. But there were things that are again. I'm more gonna. I might if I change my mind, it's because I'm watching it and I'm noticing something
Yeah.
else. What about you?
There's one aspect of this movie that makes me think that this movie couldn't happen, and that is the maturity of the dinosaurs. So for a dinosaur to be
Oh my god!
fully
I
grown,
literally
like,
was thinking.
yeah.
Oh god.
So basically, like, all the dinosaurs, or at least a good majority of them, are at, like, from what, like, Dr. Grant and Dr. like basically like the paleontologists and all the experts like seem to like imply that all like the majority of these dinosaurs have reached full maturity. So they are at like the peak of their
Mm-hmm.
age, which means that they are probably like at least, I don't know, 15, 20 years old, which means if this movie took place in 1993, that means that they would have had to have start their cloning process for these things
Years and years.
like in like the early to mid 70s, which I'm not sure if the genetic technology was a thing back then for cloning, because the cloning of like Dolly, that was, I want to say, like early 90s or like late 80s. Like that was,
Yeah.
at the time of this movie's release, a fairly recent scientific breakthrough. So for them to have been able to do that like 15 years prior to that, I don't think that they could have done that because the technology or the genetic research had yet to be discovered. And it also, I kind of don't like the fact that they never fully reveal this like shady uh, competitor company. It's never revealed in any of the sequels.
Oh, I
Um,
changed my mind.
yeah, it just seems like
I
there's
I
no, yeah, I
yeah.
don't care who you are. There are no way that there couldn't have been more than one leak. They only had Dennis Nedry, and he was a failure. But every company has some like competitor company, like Coca Cola has Pepsi, or McDonald's has Burger King, Del Taco has Taco Bell. Like every company has a competitor, and they're more or less on equal footing. So for InGen to have like more or less this monopoly on dinosaurs, they would have competition. I mean, regardless of the quality of that competition, it would still be there. So no, I don't think that this movie would play out the way that it did, because I don't think it would have even gotten to that point, because the dinosaurs wouldn't have existed. If they did exist at that time, they would be like 2 to 3 years old.
I wanna I want to kind of. I knew that you were going to say something. This is why I want you to go first because you always make points that I don't think of. I think the events that take place on this island with these people is very realistic, but I that's a very valid point. And I also think like it's just the whole idea is ludicrous. It's not even the idea of cloning dinosaurs, but the fact that this guy who's insanely wealthy, he owns more than one island. He owns an entire it's and no one seems to know about him. No one seems to know about the park. Uh
And no one seems to know about his other equally wealthy industrialist partner.
so I think with like I really the thing about these characters that I like is because they are bringing up such valuable points
Yeah.
that I think that that's so realistic. So I do think the characters themselves are really plausible, but now that I think there are a lot of other things that don't quite make
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, and also if
But
they
yeah,
started
that's
making all
like
these dinosaurs in like the 70s, then how is it that no one knows about it until he starts bringing people to the park then? Like there must have been at least like the occasional like dock workers like, "Hey, they got fucking dinos on that island. You guys should check that out." And just like it's
mm-hmm.
spreading from there. Of just like
Yeah.
at least like a rumor mill just kind of like explaining like, "Oh yeah, like Dr. Hammond has a bunch, or Richard Hammond has a bunch of dinos on this island.
No,
Is that true?
John
Yeah,
Hammond.
John Hammond. Sorry. It's like, is that true? Just like like some kind of like media kind of like blackout around the island. I felt like could have mildly explained that, but like a media blackout for 20 years, like that seems
Also, the fact that now that I think about
unrealistic.
it, yeah, that's a good point because something else. Now that we're talking about it, so the beginning of Lost World, the events of Lost World happen because a family, like this rich family and their boat, come across Site B, just like on vacation or whatever, and hanging out, and their kid is attacked by a bunch of like these small dinosaurs, and
Yeah, the
and
copies.
and so it's like, okay, if that happened on Site B, that could have totally have happened before that, as well as it also
Yeah.
could have happened on Neblar. Like there's yeah, I feel like keeping this within this story, within the world of just this park and what these characters are going through. I think their reactions, their behavior, the advice and the fact that they're saying this shouldn't happen. We can't really be comfortably endorsing your park. Like that to me is so that's what I love about this movie because it makes it so genuine. But when you really put when you put it into like the actual world, yeah, how did nobody come across these islands? How did
In
in
20
20
years,
years
yeah.
that does make I never thought about that part of it how like yeah, they wouldn't have if he had started doing this in like the 90s and then that would but like the fact that yeah, he would have had to start this in like at least the 80s. So yeah, it doesn't make when you really put it within the realm of the world, it doesn't really add up.
Yeah. I mean, even with like their internal logic, it doesn't make any sense because like when the baby raptor is born, it's born as a baby. It's like like 8 inches tall,
Yeah.
and yet you see like the fully mature raptors, and they're as tall as a human. Like they're as tall as Grant and Hammond and Muldoon. So it's like how
They're not
how
dogs.
old is
They're
this
not
thing?
dogs. They don't
Yeah,
mature within a year or two.
yeah, like it yeah, and yeah, like they're not like the clones from Star Wars that is like it just takes, and even then it takes 10 years for a clone to reach full maturity in that with their internal logic. So even then that doesn't make sense if they have
Yeah.
like the like increased aging procedure, because then it would have still taken them like 10 years to reach full maturity for any of their dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And even then I don't even think that would have been enough time for like the T-Rex to go from the size of a dog to the size of a building.
Yeah. That's just so
Um,
I did not think about any of that.
yeah,
That's a really good
I'm
point.
sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's like explained a lot more in the book.
Yeah.
Um, but as of right now, we're just covering the movie on that. But given like that kind of like underdeveloped factoid, I still genuinely love this movie.
Yeah.
This movie is a classic. The soundtrack is phenomenal. I get goosebumps every time like certain scenes where that music comes on, and if you haven't seen this, you're doing yourself and everyone around you an injustice. Watch this movie and don't be a monster.
Yeah. Don't be a velociraptor. Watch Jurassic Park.
Or a or a velocipaster.
Yep, I knew that was yeah.
Watch one of our earlier episodes. That'll make sense. Only true fans will understand that
I keep
joke.
wanting to I keep accidentally wanting to say velocipaster. And it's like, no, it's a velociraptor. They are not they are not part of the church
That
that
we
we
know
know of.
of.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
yeah, no. Velociraptors were actually Jehovah's Witnesses.
So yeah, as we wrap up, thanks for listening. We're on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher. Please review, like us, follow us. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and yeah, just if you have any suggestions for movies, feel free, and we'll take a look.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Check us out on YouTube as well. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Um, we post these videos on a more or less weekly basis. We love talking about movies, so please give us a suggestion on what you want us to talk about now.
Mm-hmm.
All
Right.
right. Yeah. So please talk to us, people.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
so lonely.
I'm Samantha Tomlinson.
And I'm Kevin Tracy. You've been listening to Movie Reel, folks. See you next time.